Nikola Tesla. I come from a very wiry and long-lived race. Some of my ancestors have been centenarians, and one of them lived 129 years. I am determined to keep up the record and please myself with prospects of great promise. Then again, nature has given me a vivid imagination. Out of this war, the greatest since the beginning of history, a new world must be born, a world that will justify the sacrifices offered by humanity. This new world must be a world in which there shall be no exploitation of the weak by the strong, of the good by the evil, where there will be no humiliation of the poor by the violence of the rich, where the products of intellect, science and art will serve society for the betterment and beautification of life, and not the individuals for achieving wealth. A single ray of light from a distant star falling upon the eye of a tyrant in bygone times, may have altered the course of his life, may have changed the destiny of nations, may have transformed the surface of the globe. So intricate, so inconceivably complex are the processes of nature. I am credited with being one of the hardest workers, and perhaps I am, if thought is the equivalent of labor, for I have devoted to it almost all of my waking hours. But if work is interpreted to be a definite performance in a specified time according to a rigid rule, then I may be the worst of idlers. The mind is sharper and keener in seclusion and uninterrupted solitude. No big laboratory is needed in which to think. Originality thrives in seclusion free of outside influences beating upon us to cripple the creative mind. Be alone, that is the secret of invention, be alone, that is when ideas are born. The spread of civilization may be likened to a fire, first, a feeble spark, next a flickering flame, then a mighty blaze, ever increasing in speed and power. The female mind has demonstrated a capacity for all the mental acquirements and achievements of men, and as generations ensue that capacity will be expanded. The average woman will be as well educated as the average man, and then better educated, for the dormant faculties of her brain will be stimulated to an activity that will be all the more intense and powerful because of centuries of repose. Though free to think and act, we are held together, like the stars in the firmament, with ties inseparable. These ties cannot be seen, but we can feel them. The gift of mental power comes from God, divine being, and if we concentrate our minds on that truth, we become in tune with this great power. My mother had taught me to seek all truth in the Bible. There is something within me that might be illusion, as it is often case with young delighted people, but if I would be fortunate to achieve some of my ideals, it would be on the behalf of the whole of humanity. If those hopes would become fulfilled, the most exciting thought would be that it is a deed of a Serb. My ear barely caught signals coming in regular succession which could not have been produced on Earth. You may live to see man-made horrors beyond your comprehension. Today's scientists have substituted mathematics for experiments, and they wander off through equation after equation, and eventually build a structure which has no relation to reality. I cannot exaggerate the effect of this marvelous sight on my childish imagination. Day after day I asked myself what is electricity and found no answer. 80 years have gone by since and I still ask the same question, unable to answer it. So astounding are the facts in this connection, that it would seem as though the Creator himself had electrically designed this planet. The inventions I have conceived in this way have always worked. In 30 years there has not been a single exception. The last 29 days of the month are the hardest. Our first endeavors are purely instinctive prompting of an imagination vivid and undisciplined. As we grow older, reason asserts itself and we become more and more systematic and designing. But those early impulses, though not immediately productive, are of the greatest moment and may shape our very destinies. At times it has seemed to me as though I myself heard a whispering voice, and I have searched eagerly among my dusty bulbs and bottles. I fear my imagination has deceived me, but that they are still my dusty bulbs, and I am still listening hopefully. The scientists of today think deeply instead of clearly. One must be sent to think clearly, but one can think deeply and be quite insane. I was swayed by superstitious belief and lived in constant dread of the spirit of evil, of ghosts, and ogres and other unholy monsters of the dark. Then, all at once, there came a tremendous change which altered the course of my whole existence. If you only knew the magnificence of the 3, 6 and 9, then you would have the key to the universe. Every effort under compulsion demands a sacrifice of life energy. I never paid such a price. On the contrary, I have thrived on my thoughts. We shall not satisfy ourselves simply with improving steam and explosive engines or inventing new batteries. We have something much better to work for, a greater task to fulfill. We have to evolve means for obtaining energy from stores which are forever inexhaustible, to perfect methods which do not imply consumption and waste of any material whatever. Of all the frictional resistances, the one that most retards human movement is ignorance, what Buddha called the greatest evil in the world. The friction which results from ignorance can be reduced only by the spread of knowledge and the unification of the heterogeneous elements of humanity. No effort could be better spent. The day when we shall know exactly what electricity is, will chronicle an event probably greater, more important than any other recorded in the history of the human race. The time will come when the comfort, the very existence, perhaps, of man will depend upon that wonderful agent. If there are intelligent inhabitants of Mars or any other planet, it seems to me that we can do something to attract their attention. I have had this scheme under consideration for 5 or 6 years. If Edison had a needle to find in a haystack, he would proceed at once with the diligence of the bee to examine straw after straw until he found the object of his search. I was a sorry witness of such doings, knowing that a little theory and calculation would have saved him 90% of his labor. I have been feeding pigeons, thousands of them for years. But there was one, a beautiful bird, pure white with light gray tips on its wings, that one was different. It was a female. I had only to wish and call her and she would come flying to me. I loved that pigeon as a man loves a woman, and she loved me. As long as I had her, there was a purpose to my life. I have hundreds of inventions which I could not take the patents of, on account of my misfortune. I undertook the production of these phenomena of lightning and, in 1899 I actually succeeded, using a generator of 2000 horsepower, in obtaining discharges of 18 million volts carrying currents of 1200 amperes, which were of such power as to be audible at a distance of 13 miles. I also learned how to produce such lightnings as occur in nature, and mastered all the technical difficulties in this connection. But I found that even in the small and comparatively negligible trigger work called for the employment of thousands of horsepower, and this is the great obstacle now in the way of this supreme accomplishment. I finally succeeded in reaching electrical movements or rates of delivery of electrical energy not only approximating, but, as shown in many comparative tests and measurements, actually surpassing those of lightning discharges. I do not think there is any thrill that can go through the human heart like that felt by the inventor as he sees some creation of the brain unfolding to success. Such emotions make a man forget food, sleep, friends, love, everything. My conviction has grown so strong that I no longer look on this plan of energy or intelligence transmission as a mere theoretical possibility, but as a serious problem in electrical engineering, which must be carried out some day. Woman will ignore precedent and startle civilization with their progress. The greatest value of my invention will result from its effect upon warfare and armaments. for by reason of its certain and unlimited destructiveness it will tend to bring about and maintain permanent peace among nations.